St. Thomas Aquinas was born around 1227 or so. And his parents, at the age of 5, put him in a Benedictine monastery so that the monks could raise him, teaching him all about the theology and about the church and about becoming a monk. His mother wanted him to become eventually the abbot. Well, Thomas learned a great deal, but then when the time came, he wanted to further studies. He became introduced to the philosophy of Aristotle, and he was intrigued and began having tremendous insights into the relationship between faith and reason. And he wanted to continue those studies, but his mother objected. In fact, she had his brother capture him, and they kept him locked up in the house for a whole year. At the end of that year, he escaped, and he went off to Paris, continued his studies, and eventually became a professor in Paris, a professor in many different areas, and became a prolific writer. Thomas Aquinas still remains one of the key theologians for the Catholic Church. What St. Thomas did was he saw all of creation as a manifestation of God's reality and the reality of God. He could look at all of that, and from reason and faith, he could see such great truth. The question is, what is truth? Truth is that what exists in reality is what exists in our mind, exists in reality. We can imagine things, but if they're not there, then that's not true. For example, Thomas would do something like this. Say if there was a great rainstorm outside, and afterwards you went outside and you have a great tree in your yard, and there's twigs laying all over the ground. Well, you would deduce reasonably that the wind and the rain blew the twigs off the tree, right? And they fell on the ground. Now, if you went outside and you saw that every one of those twigs was cut in exact same lengths and all laid in a row, you would say that they didn't fall off the tree that way. You would deduce that an intelligent mind had to come and arrange those twigs in that fashion. Thomas is saying that we look at reality and see that its natural reality comes from something supernatural, something greater than itself. He could look at the human body, he could look at the animals, the trees, the mountains, everything, and say, when we look at all that, there has to be an intelligent mind behind all of it. It makes sense, doesn't it? And that's where we deduce his deduction of one of the proofs for the existence of God. And Thomas was just such a great saint, and I really loved studying his philosophy in the seminary. It just opened my mind to so many realities that I had never thought of before, and so I'm so grateful. Years ago, there was a comic strip called Alleluia. I don't know if you remember it, but what was featured in it was a time machine. And if someone got into the time machine and pushed the right buttons, they could go all the way back to some other period in history. It was kind of fascinating comic strip, but it wasn't really possible to go back in time. It was the imagination of the author of that comic strip that could do this and have some fun with it. But then you think about it, do we as Christians go back in time? We're celebrating the Mass today, and it's the sacrifice of Calvary. We're not going back 2018 years ago when it actually happened in Jerusalem, but God, by his power, is transcending time, because there is no time with God, and he can make present to us the reality of the crucifixion. And that's what we experience here at the Mass. It's marvelous, isn't it? And Thomas Aquinas would say that, that by God, by his power, can change bread and wine into his body and blood. By his power can make present to us. We're present at the scene at Calvary, just like our Blessed Mother was at the foot of the cross. That's pretty awesome reality. And today we need to think about that. In the book to Hebrews, it says that Christ did not repeatedly die. He died once. He doesn't die at every Mass. He died once, but we're present at that death on Calvary by God's power. It's marvelous when you think about it. And so we eagerly await the second coming of Christ, as it says in the reading, when we will be joined with him for all eternity, and he brings salvation to everyone. And so today we thank God for the gift of Thomas Aquinas, his wisdom and his teachings that we have in the church. And we give thanks to God for our faith, the things that we can believe because Jesus Christ, who proved that he was God, taught them to us as the truth. Let us stand and offer our prayers and petitions.